We're not going to have a long intro. We're going to get right into it. You know who I am. You know what the channel is. You know what we do. That's why you clicked on this video. Anyway, listen, is Billy Donovan or AK the person to blame for this season? I know we've had a version of this video done before, but I kind of want to do it again because as I look more and more at this team as we come toward the close of this season, I have more questions than I have answers, and that's kind of weird. Now, I'm going to start this off. I'm going to preface this by saying, hey, there is a lot of context that's not going to be given in this video. You can only give so much context on this particular topic. And let's be real. Yes, while I could blame AK for some things, he also can't force people to come to Chicago. That's one thing. Money has to work out. Another thing. Two, I can blame Billy for a lot of things, but I can't blame him for roster construction. So we're going to get that out the way because I know you're going to have a bunch of people who side one way or the other. But I'm going to drill down a couple of things that I think are really pivotal for us to point out because this could have gone differently, in my opinion. I really do think this season could have gone differently. So I'm going to start with Billy Donovan. I'm going to say Billy Donovan is the reason why Billy Donovan's inconsistencies are the reason why we find ourselves at the 10th seed. Hear me out. I've always said, and I will maintain, how you sit there and give your star player opportunities or develop your star player in certain instances determines a lot. When you have no real identity, you have to sit there and look at it and say, hey, who is it at the helm that sits there and makes that determination? Who can sit there and say, hey, this is the direction we're going and this is what we need to do and put that into place? And I think that in this case, it starts with head coaching. Simply put, I've said it before, I could be wrong, but I will die on this hill alone if I am. We didn't have an identity because we weren't sitting there trying to force who the guy was. And I get that I put air quotations for a reason because everyone likes to struggle with that. And they say, oh, it wasn't this, oh, it wasn't that. Look back at the games. Look back at the games. We've all said it. You've been on our live calls. I've heard Stacey King even announce it. We've seen it. There wasn't a clear cut, this guy needs to have the ball in this situation. Mainly because Zach hadn't taken the leap in certain instances, still getting back, wasn't 100% healthy, things of that nature. And DeMar was still kind of the guy. But when that started to not be the case, when it started to be more like, hey, Zach needs to be taking these shots more. Zach needs to be the one that you allow to initiate and come out the gate gunning. We didn't have Billy Donovan sit there and say, this is the direction we're going. What we had was, okay, whatever game plan Billy would run, but DeMar would come down end of every quarter, back to the basket, try to get his game off. And this would be cool if this was Toronto. I can see that, right? That's DeMar's show. This would be cool if this was the Spurs, DeMar's show, right? Clearly the best talent on that roster if you go back and look at it. DeMar's not the best talent on this roster. DeMar's not the guy that the Bulls have linked to this long term. And there was, I don't care what anyone says, there was a struggle as to who should be taking certain shots when. It was evident. And I don't think Billy Donovan addressed that issue quick enough. I don't think he nipped that in the bud quick enough. Now, I do want to give him, in his defense, I do want to give him some type of credit. Zach wasn't always showing that he could be the guy. But you don't get the opportunity to be the guy if you have to sit there and play behind a DeMar DeRozan. Case in point, I do this too because we compare these two players a lot. Zach LaVine used to get compared to Devin Booker a lot, compared to Bradley Beal a lot. Ironically, those comparisons happened when Bradley Beal no longer had John Wall in front of him, and I don't believe there was anyone that was ever in front of Devin Booker. However, Zach gets injured. We bring DeMar in. Now, DeMar is great talent. I'm not taking it away from him. But he's taking those opportunities from Zach to make that leap that those other players didn't have. And so it was an unfair comparison from that aspect. And I've said it multiple times. And again, I will die on this hill alone. If you don't have a clear-cut organization that says, hey, this is where we're going. This who should be taking it. I mean, after you pay $215 million, you would think that would be the case, right? But it wasn't evident. That's step one, right? Two, why I think is on Billy Donovan. Too much meddling with the lineups. If you go back earlier this season, he flirted with a lot of different lineups. And I understand that you want to sit there and you want to see what works and things of that nature. But it was very evident and very clear early on that certain things just wasn't going to work out. Patrick Williams was at one point was getting still getting starter minutes or still getting very, very high minutes with lack of production, specifically on the rebounding tip. If you go back into earlier in the season, you see it on our live calls. We got beat points in the paint. We got beat on boards. We got beat on second chance points. We were getting dominated in those things. 3-point shooting alone. We're gonna leave that alone. We're gonna save that. I know what everyone's thinking. We're gonna save that. Patrick Williams is our four. We would put him in as our four. We would start him next to DeMar. Sometimes he would come in. Either way, he was not filling in that gap. We would see Vooch in the paint by himself. One red jersey, bunch of other jerseys by himself. If your whole claim to fame is I couldn't even say 3 and D because he was still passing up shots to a certain degree. But if your whole claim is defense, lockdown, getting boards and stuff like that, then you need to be down there getting boards. He wasn't getting boards. But he was on the floor, and Billy rode that. Now, I do want to sit there and say this. Not having Javonte for extended period of time and stuff like that does matter. Because then Javonte did fill in a lot. But even if you look at that, Javonte at times would give Javonte, I believe, is shorter than P. Will be put in at the same position, much more active. And not just the active, not Breeze active, where they just running and jumping and nothing's coming from it, but really getting active, really getting those 50-50 balls, really going out there making plays. Javonte was earning his keep. Not having him really hurt. This is kind of a hard stance to take now because you look at it, P. Will's had a couple of good games and stuff like that, and it's worked out. But it's almost like a too little too late as far as how it impacts the, win-loss column. Happy that he's starting to still see some progression in his career, but still, it is what it is. Now, I do want to give this. This is still coming up on. Now, we just passed a few games ago his 2 full seasons for him in playing production. So I want to give him that leeway. But when you're doing what's best for the team and what's best to win, you can't say development and win now in the same time, in the same sentence. It doesn't work that way. And that's what we were doing. Sticking with Alex Caruso too long. Alex Caruso is a spark off the bench, things of that nature. He was that in the Lakers. His plus minus is phenomenal. If you go look at the advanced analytics, Alex Caruso is not just a guy, he's a stud from an advanced analytical standpoint. And I can see why you would ride that train and you would sit there and put him in as much as he did. But there was plenty of times where he was just running and jumping. I mean, getting beat off the dribble, not really producing on the offensive end. And at times, this seemed like it didn't work. But he stuck with that lineup. I mean, Pat even mentioned it. He's sticking with him for a very long time in that particular spot. It didn't work. And I also think it affected more so Kobe White than Ayo, which is another thing. Having Kobe White come off the bench, good move. I respect it. But how he was played at times and things of that nature, Kobe White, his numbers dropped. His minutes also dropped. So, I mean, there's a direct correlation with that. But you have to look at these things, right? Billy Donovan did so much tampering with this lineup. Like, we have something that worked. And he would switch it the next day or next game. And you would say, hey, you go by the best matchup and things of that nature. And I get that. But it wasn't working out. It'd be different if he switched it based off of who we were playing, and that made sense. But when you don't have a solidified starting five, you mess with a lot of continuity right there with each different unit that you're messing with. Sometimes you got to roll with who you roll with. And I know that's you're saying, well, that's kind of contradicted what you're saying. No, he didn't have it. It wasn't set. And things that would work, he would go away from. Lastly, I would say this before moving on to AK, because this video is really about AK. But I wanted to sit there and spread the love, spread the hate, spread the pettiness, because at this point, I look back and I've been watching a lot of our older games this season. And it's like, man, What made us do that? What made us chance? I'm not just one of those commentators, one of those sports analysts that sits here and just toss off. I actually went back and looked at these games. I actually went back and looked at what he was trying to accomplish. And while I do agree that not having a point guard impacted a lot of it also falls on him and what he was not able to accomplish. And that last thing I would say, ultimately, for him is not making adjustments fast enough. There's times where he didn't call timeouts on runs, and this would be multiple games. Was like, Billy, we're getting beat. Timeout. It's almost like that Monday Night Football thing. With the Manning brothers. I know we're gonna get a timeout here, but didn't get a timeout. Okay, I know we're gonna get a timeout. Didn't get a timeout. Just game management as a whole just seemed off. And I know he was grasping for straws and trying to figure out certain things, but good lord. I mean, some another case in point before I move on to AK, because I really want to talk about AK. Big men matter. Big men matter. There were times where we were getting beat. It's just Vooch down there getting rebounds. And I don't know how many times I've had to say this. I would love to see us play a big lineup. I want to see Andre Drummond and Vooch on the floor at the same time, battling for those boards, because we would get dominated in the paint. And everyone was on the trade Vooch thing. Like, Vooch is such a bad defender. Vooch is covering a lot of ground for a big dude. Now, he's not the best defensive presence. I'm not going to make it seem like he is, but he's also a better offensive presence than most centers in the league as well. So you can't have both, right? Joel Embiid is great, right? But you only have so many greats that play at a certain position at any given time, right? It's not as if there's always a plethora of them. You have the guys who are the elite of the elite. You have the guys who are all stars. You got the guys who are just above average. You got everyone else, right? I will put Vooch as an all-star in that all-star category. He legitimately is. He's legitimately been an all-star. He would be in that category. You can't make up for everything. This is a team game. You have to have help defense and rotation, stuff like that. But he wasn't getting the help. And a lot of that is on Billy. A lot of that is on Billy for not putting the people in place to do so. And again, it could have been a train wreck, but it would have showed me something different if he had made those adjustments and it didn't work. It'd be different if he made those adjustments to go big, and we'd be like, okay, that's why Billy doesn't do that. But he didn't even do that, and that's the problem, right? Now, again, Billy deserves a lot of hate. Billy deserves a lot of praise as well, because I do think that a lot of good came out of what Billy was trying to do. And if you look at it, there's the addition of Patrick Beverley and how Patrick Beverley has actually come in and tried to implement what Billy's been trying to do is clear. It's clear, right? But I also think a couple of things happened at once. Patrick Beverley came in to implement what Billy wanted to do and be a real floor general, and they also had made decisions to let Zach be Zach. And with those things kind of coming together at one time, you saw this good run. Excuse me. But AK has to be on the hot seat as well. And I don't mean hot seat like, oh, his job's in jeopardy, because we know he's going to be here. But AK has to come on the hot seat for the simple fact that roster construction matters. I'm going to say it again. Roster construction freaking matters. LeBron James, I'm going to take you to Scenic Route just to come back to it. LeBron James, everywhere he goes, everyone talks about and they joke about how, if he comes to a team and they're trash, you can expect him to be traded the next season. And again, you've seen it happen. You've seen him happen. We online right now. You see pictures of the old Lakers team: Lonzo Ball, Julius Randle, Brandon Ingram, all those guys, and all those guys have evolved into studs, right? Bi is a stud. Julius Randle is a stud. About to make the playoffs with the Knicks. Actually, they're in the playoffs, I believe. I mean, they may have clinched already. What was the other players? D'Lo, ironically, is back on. What's the name? Josh Hart has been moved and stuff like that. All those players are studs in their own right. Jordan Clarkson has been cooking down there. Like, all of them have evolved into their own right. But when LeBron got there, whoever was there, they all got traded. They all got traded for the team that actually got to the championship, won in a bubble, things of that nature. Shout out to them, right? Roster construction matters. That team wasn't ready for LeBron. LeBron needed more shooters. He needed people that didn't play the same position as him. It mattered, right? We saw the Lakers this season. AD, LeBron, Russ. Hey, listen, those players, still great players in their own right, can still hoop at a high level right now. But guess what? No shooters. Excuse me. No shooters. We don't have any shooters. Guess what? LeBron looks real normal when there's no shooters around him. Russ looks real normal. Russ looks bad when there's no shooters around him. When there's no help for AD, it's just he goes out there, he gets his points when he's playing if he doesn't hurt himself, right? Roster construction matters. In today's NBA, you need shooters. I'll wait. I'll actually add this pause into this video intentionally. I want someone to tell me what's our best shooting lineup and how many games we won with them. And is it enough to compete in the East? I'll wait. This is your time to fill it in the comments. It's a horrible lineup. Whatever you put together was a horrible lineup. It was probably consistent on two people taking threes. Kobe White and Zach. Which again, Kobe White from three is not a good 3-point shooter. Well, Zach has been phenomenal as of late, but wasn't early on. Vooch takes a lot of threes. Guess what? Vooch at one point was leading in 3-point attempts at earlier this season. That's a fact. You can go find it. It's not good. Now I'm not saying that these players are, but if Vooch is one of your top 3-point shooters as your big, you might have a problem because that don't seem to work out. If Kobe White is your best 3-point shooter as consistent as he is, you have a problem. That's not going to work out. Zach being Zach is great, but guess what? When Zach drives and kicks out, he needs to kick out to a shooter. When DeMar drives back to the basket, pump fake, gets that they don't bite, and he kicks out, he needs to be kicking out to another shooter. Now, I want to put emphasis on this one. LA got them some shooters. Role players, but shooters. People who can make plays. Hachimura, uh, Austin Reeves. Those guys can shoot. Phoenix gave up a lot for Kevin Durant. But Devin Booker can shoot. KD can freaking shoot. They have players on that team I don't even know that can shoot. Chris Paul, as old as he is, can still shoot. And that's before I even get down to the young potential also they have in Aiden. Roster construction matters. And that was out there. I'm not comparing. I'm just letting you know. I'm just showing. You look at the Nets and what they got back. The Nets are in the playoffs. The Nets have a playoff team. They also have shooters now. They can shoot. Roster construction matters. AK had time. Now to get back to the main point, AK had time to make this roster better. AK had moves that he could have made to have made this roster. Now, I know that we've put a lot of praise on him for some of the moves that he's made in terms of getting DeMar, getting Vooch, and that was really big considering where we were. From where we were to where we are, big difference, night and day. Have to give him credit for that one, right? But at the end of the day, just because you've made those moves doesn't necessarily mean that it equated to high-level winning. Right now, we are not that much better than the last season. We're just not. Now the league has changed and things of that nature, but guess what? Our window for the players that you brought in was very small and very short. This wasn't a grow with me roster. This was a win within a certain time period roster. Now we have to make some changes. Now, this offseason could be totally different. I don't believe Vooch has been re-upped. I don't think that deal has been done. If I'm wrong, hey, I'm wrong. Forgive me, whatever. I don't think they've talked about any extensions with DeMar at this particular point. I think he was on a 3-year deal. Those are conversations that could have already been happening, hashed out if that was the definitive move. Those things have not happened. With Lonzo Ball definitely not coming back. At this point, he's only played maybe a tenth of his entire contract. I think, you look at that. If you're looking at Lonzo to be that shooter that was going to change everything, no, it wasn't. Stop it. There's some moves that can be made. However, I do know for a fact that there were some things to be done. He could have been more aggressive at the trade deadline. We could have signed some other individuals who have not been picked up as of yet. I still want to understand, and someone please let me know why We only went as far as to get Patrick Beverly, who I could have. I know we needed a point guard, but there's a lot more that could have been done. Why did we stand packed as much as we did, even in the offseason, knowing that hey, this team needed help? These players are healthy now. Patrick Williams is healthy at this point. Io is still healthy, has not been injured. These players have not made the leaps that we want them to make, and it was clear that you can't tell me Patrick Beverly is. Excuse me, Patrick Williams is better now than he was by All Star break. You can't tell me he's a different player. It's the same guy, marginally better because he's taking a few more shots. Marginally better, but it's nothing that jumps out the gym. In fact, Pat has been on this channel and said Patrick Williams is a bust. So we have to look at that. Roster construction matters. Who you grab matters. There's a lot of players that he could have grabbed right there. You look at that draft for Patrick Williams, Tyrese Halliburton was in that draft. He didn't go top 4. Halliburton has gamed us from the logo. Halliburton is a shooter. He's also a point guard. I know hindsight is 50-50. I get all of that, right? Hindsight is 20-20, really. But anyway, like I get all of that, right? But roster construction matters. Riding it out with Kobe White and no one had inconsistencies. Roster construction matters. Billy can only play the players that are available to him. I can't sit there and put all this angst and blame on Billy Donovan when he's only responsible for the people who he has before him. He can't control the fact that Andre Drummond can be a stud for 10 minutes but pick up 4 fouls in that same 10 minutes and can't play half the game. He can't do anything about the fact that Patrick Williams was afraid to shoot most of the season. Then by the time he finally shot, it's a little too late. And at this time, he still doesn't grab enough boards for us to be sitting there praising him the way that we do for him to be a top 4 pick. And he gets started minutes. He can't do anything about the simple fact that Io has hit this sophomore slump like nobody's business, and no one's talks about it, despite the fact that Io was shooting 50% from the field. He can't do anything about the fact that Alex Caruso, as good as it was to pick him up and all that hustle and grit and grime and blue collar work that he does, isn't the offensive player that we need. Can't do anything about the fact that Patrick Beverly is, no matter how many too small gestures he puts to LeBron, it's still too small and comes up and is very inconsistent. Patrick Beverly is a bench player at best. A vocal leader, sure, bench player at best. He's a point guard version of Udonis Haslem in many ways, and I don't mean that to be disrespectful because Udonis Haslem was a good basketball player. I'm not saying great. I said he was good, but Patrick Beverly doesn't move the needle for you that much. He doesn't. So AK deserves a lot of blame for where we end up, just as much as Billy Donovan. Billy Donovan has his rotations issues. Billy Donovan has all this. Billy Donovan may even chew too much freaking gum. Whatever. But he can only play the people that are available to him. He can only game plan for the people available to him. If the people who are available to him don't fit his scheme, are not playing basketball in the way, are just not good enough to compete in today's league, he can't do anything about that. So if we want to sit there and have any angst about any particular person this time around, I want us to have the same angst for AK as the Lakers fans have for Rob Pelinka before he started making moves. We have to put the proper blame where the blame needs to go. I don't think Darvin Ham is a good coach. I don't think he's even shown that. I know he's new and stuff like that. I don't think he's a good coach. But he also didn't have the right roster to sit there and make that assessment with. LeBron James or not. Billy Donovan, I think can be a good coach. I think is a good coach. But I can't sit there and say he's not the coach to take you to the championship if you don't even have a championship roster. There's very few coaches who've made something out of nothing. Every coach who's won multiple championships and even the ones as of recently, they had a legendary player and they hit at the right time. Toronto comes to mind. They hit at the right time. You know how many injuries happened during that season? Come on, you can't sit there and tell me that that's how Toronto team wins if KD doesn't get hurt. You can't tell me that Toronto team wins if Clay doesn't get hurt. You can't tell me that team wins. If Clay doesn't get hurt, that Toronto still loses. Like, They got their ring. I'm happy for them. But let's be real. That roster was already set in stone. They had fired their coach beforehand. Nick Nurse comes in and inherits the same roster that been in the Eastern Conference Finals for multiple years. Just ran into LeBron James, but now he has Kawhi Leonard, who's a better player than DeMar DeRozan. They win. I get it. It was only one season. He ain't been back since. But the Bucks have Giannis. They have a freaking Greek god on their team. Right? Steve Kerr inherited a legendary team. They were already on the come up. Now he did bridge the gap, but he Steve Kerr doesn't. Steph Curry was going to be Steph Curry regardless. Klay Thompson was coming regardless. Those boys was going to be a good shooting backcourt. He has the best shooter in league history. I'm going down this rabbit hole. Let's sit there and let you know. Roster construction matters. Zach could be that next guy for us. But outside of that, we don't have a good supporting cast around him or DeMar for us to be sitting there saying, hey, we should have gone further. How? Why? For what? To do what? We don't have it. So if there's anything, I want to end this by saying, and this is probably way longer than I wanted it to be, but hey, it is what it is. This is one of those. This is probably me just ranting at this point because I'm so pissed at the fact that we've missed the opportunity to actually do something. But at the same time, we could have been better early on, and it all boils down to those two people. Excuse me, Rob. I'm about to say Rob freaking Pelinka, God Lord, AK, Arturis, and Billy Donovan. But I want to hear what you think. I want to hear your thoughts. I've gone on this extensive rant. I pretty much had my own Windy City Breeze version of, I guess, Locked On at this point. I don't care. Like, it's one of those things where we could have been better than the 10th seed. When you go back and look at it, we could have been better, and we weren't. And it's sad because we had so much promise, and it doesn't just fall on one player. It doesn't fall on Lonzo being hurt. But I want to hear your thoughts, man. You know who we are. You know what we do. I want you to put it in the comments. If it's love or this hate, I get back at you, man. Peace.